Here are two terrifying true tales of overnight horrors. The Haunted Room, submitted by Sarah. Sarah had been looking forward to her weekend getaway for weeks. She had found a beautiful, historic mansion on Airbnb that promised a cozy, peaceful stay. The host had glowing reviews, and the price was too good to pass up. As she stepped into her room, she felt a sense of unease, but she brushed it off as pre-vacation jitters. That night, Sarah heard noises coming from the hallway outside her room. She got up to check, but the hallway was empty. She assumed it was just an old building settling, but the noises continued throughout the night. Every time she heard them, she would turn on her phone's flashlight to look around, but she never saw anything out of the ordinary. The next day, Sarah decided to explore the mansion. It was a beautiful building, with high ceilings, ornate decorations, and antique furniture. But as she walked down the hallways, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She kept turning around, but no one was there. That night, the noises were louder than ever. Sarah was too scared to get up and investigate, so she stayed in bed, trying to ignore them. But then, she heard a creaking noise coming from the foot of her bed. She slowly turned on her flashlight and saw a figure standing there, watching her. It was a woman in a long white dress, with pale skin and dark eyes. Sarah screamed and turned on the lights, but the woman vanished. Sarah packed her bags and left the Airbnb that night, never staying in an Airbnb again. She still has nightmares about the haunted mansion, and wonders what might have happened if she had stayed a moment longer. The Sanatorium, submitted by Jack. I had always been fascinated by abandoned buildings, and the Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky was no exception. The thought of exploring the dark, decrepit halls of a once grand institution that housed so much pain and suffering was thrilling to me. I arrived at the sanatorium in the afternoon, just as the sun was beginning to set. The building looked even more ominous in the fading light, its windows boarded up, and its walls covered in peeling paint. But I wasn't afraid. I had come prepared with my flashlight, camera, and a sense of adventure. I made my way through the hallways, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The air was musty, and the silence was eerie. But as I explored, I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. I shrugged it off as just my imagination and kept walking. After a couple of hours, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around, and I see a woman standing a few feet from me. She looked as if she had just arrived, with a backpack slung over her shoulder and a determined look on her face. "Hey," I said, surprised and confused to see someone else there. "Hey," she replied, walking closer to me. "What are you doing here?" "I'm exploring," I said, gesturing to my camera. "Me too," she said, smiling. "Mind if I tag along?" "I'm Jack," I said, and she replies, "I'm Anna." I was relieved to have company. We continued exploring the sanatorium together, taking pictures and swapping stories of other abandoned buildings we had explored in the past. But as we made our way deeper into the building, things started to feel even more sinister. We heard strange noises, whispers in the dark, and saw unexplained movements. At one point, we found a room filled with old, rusted medical equipment, and it was like a scene from a horror movie. As we approached the morgue, Sarah turned to me and said, "Hey, I have an idea. Let's go into one of those cabinets where they used to keep the bodies. I want to see how scary it is." I hesitated at first, but then curiosity got the better of me, and we both lay inside our own cabinets. The door slammed shut behind me, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence and my pulse. But then I heard Sarah scream, and I panicked. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. I pounded on it, shouting her name, but there was no response. Just as I was about to give up, I heard a faint laughter that grew louder and crazier. I knew I had to get out of there. One last kick to the cabinet door, and I was met with silence. The laughing had stopped, and Sarah was nowhere to be seen. My heart raced as I frantically looked around the room, checking every cabinet. However, she was nowhere in sight. I stumbled out of the morgue, my mind racing with confusion and fear. Had I imagined everything? Was Sarah playing a cruel joke on me? Or was there something more sinister at play? All I knew at the moment is I had to get away from the morgue. I made my way back to my base camp, my thoughts a jumbled mess. I collapsed onto my cot and tried to catch my breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The next morning, I asked the staff if they had seen Sarah, but they looked at me as if I were crazy. "There was no one else here last night," they said. "Just you." I couldn't believe it. I could feel the blood rushing from my face, feeling as though I'd pass out. It had all felt so real. But on my way home, doubts crept in. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I had imagined everything. Had I fallen asleep as soon as I laid out my cot? To this day, I can't shake the feeling that something followed me out of that sanatorium. And I know, I will never forget that horrific laugh. Until next time.